podcast, Dr. Cooper.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. If you would please start out by just telling our viewers and listeners a little more about your background. Where does it all begin for you?
Well, I am born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and I stayed in Missouri for my undergraduate career. I went to Truman State University, and I had the benefit of being a McNair baccalaureate scholar as an undergraduate. And then as I applied to graduate school, I got into the University of Florida, where I was a McKnight doctoral fellow. And so I went from Missouri to Florida to where I am right now in Connecticut. And I'm just very blessed to really have a job where I get to teach in my specialization and work with students who care and want to impact the futures of youth and impact, our criminal justice system as a whole, as well as do research that has the potential to influence policy and, of course, lives.
Very rich background. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, in addition to your work as a professor and the director of research, you are also a certified prevention professional. Can you tell us about the work you do with nonprofits and community organizations?
Yes, I first started this work during my time in Florida while I was pursuing my PhD. After I got my master's, I wanted to try and engage and get that applied research skill because I knew that I, as a McNair scholar, had gone straight through from undergraduate to master's to PhD. And so I had in the back of my mind that when I finish with my PhD, what will help study this kind of evidence about my education and about my experience. And I happened to meet someone who was working in a community coalition, and that began my entry into this prevention space. At the time, when you work for a nonprofit, they may not offer in terms of like the most lucrative funds in terms of payment, but what they could offer me was professional development. And I was selected to become the one of the members of the national cohort of ambassadors for the Community Anti-Coalition, the Community Anti-Coalitions of America, CATCA, and I represented the state of Florida in 2012 to 2014. And so that time that I spent in training, which is really thousands of hours across a broad array of topics in prevention, where we're saying to ourselves, how can we prevent teen suicide, teen pregnancy, teen drug use, teen, of course, delinquency and crime. And for me, it just became a really beneficial opportunity to be in the community and kind of tie together that community passion that I have with also the research that I do.
Awesome. Now, who has had a tremendous impact on you in your career field?
When I think about this question, I actually kind of have it in two different thoughts. When I think of someone who I actually know, I directly go to my mom. I'm Dr. Cooper. My maiden name is Dr. Tolson. My mom is Dr. Tolson. And so there's this modeling. My mom, when she retired, she was dean, over library services. That is not the proper title. She's going to kill me. But I saw this passion for education, this opportunity to kind of be working with communities in that education sector. And I always thought to myself, I might be a doctor. I never thought it would actually be in criminology. I thought it would be in chemistry, but I always had encouragement to pursue those goals. And so she was definitely a major impact. And just the other person I would say, because we're celebrating right now all types of things, but Ronald E. McNair, as I mentioned, I'm a McNair scholar. So to have had the opportunity in undergraduate to learn about research, it really impacted me when I went to the University of Florida as well, because they have a McNair program, and that really allowed me to mentor and be also like brought into a family there. And I think community is really important. And so I think that has impacted me in terms of continuously connecting me with people who are oftentimes trying to pursue similar goals and experiencing similar struggles as I am.
Thank you. Now, you currently conduct research in the areas of youth, young adults, juvenile justice, delinquency prevention, criminology theory, and sex offending. And all of these topics, being an elementary school principal, are very fascinating to me. Can you talk a little more about your research and why you chose this area?
Yes, it really ties into the concept of prevention in the first place. I think crime and justice in general are important topics and certainly severe issues to be addressed. But when I think about the solutions, I am hoping that the opportunity to have the most hope is with our youth and the most opportunity for influence because of the developmental research. It shows that the investment in our youth is worth it and that we need to make those commitments. And so I think that my research provides the opportunity for people to ask themselves how what they're doing and where they are might influence youth. And I've really been trying to more recently broaden my influence, the scope of my research. And so I'm not just looking at youth and the system, but we've been looking at what we talk about as social determinants of health. We've been wanting to look at housing. We've been wanting to look at health. And so I've most recently been coordinating with our state agencies and our Juvenile Justice Policy Oversight Committee so that we'll be putting together a data set in the state of Connecticut that allows us to explore questions that we have really only been able to look at in terms of what does the system tell us about kids in the system. Not those are really just kids. Those are kids from communities. What do we know about those communities? How do we better serve those kids? Those are the questions that I hope my research will lend a better answer to.
Wow, you've really reached a lot of milestones. You've done a lot. What would you say is the key to a fulfilled life?
I would say the key to a fulfilled life is just joy. And I mean by that, like a commitment to joy, a commitment to seeking fulfillment, a commitment to, like for me, that's also others. I take joy in seeing, my community thrive. I take joy in seeing my students do well. But I think that joy is intentional, meaning I ask myself what makes me happy and I try and move toward those things. So I think maybe also reflection. I think that's a big piece of it. Just being able to be honest with yourself in those conversations and then seek intentionally what you want.
Now, one of the things that I really believe is that we're obligated to help those that come after us. I really feel that. Knowing that, what is one thing you wish you had known earlier in your career, something that perhaps someone starting in your field should know?
I just continue to think about the value of community. I have moved around, so I'm from Missouri and I stayed there for undergraduate, but going all the way to Florida, I didn't realize at the time some of the ways that my community was pouring into me or the way that my community has sustained me. But especially in this moment in the pandemic where I can't go see those people and I still have to make an effort, it really, I would just say for young people, just know that those high school friends, that's important. Those college friends, those even just networking in this moment, right? I would just say the reason why I would want my younger self to know that is because it's something, once again, to be intentional about, but it's also a thing that you get what you give. You being there and being a support for people will make it that when you need help, others are more likely to be there for you.
I like that. And speaking on those same lines, what advice would you give to someone that's wanting to pursue a career that's similar to yours or follow in your footsteps?
I would say if you're interested in the field of criminal justice, we need you. I know you watch the television. So just know that every field has an opportunity for improvement. Mine is not excluded. And I really take a lot of solace in my role in training the future workforce in criminal justice and juvenile justice. And I think that when you watch the news, there's a lay perspective, but if you continue to read, you continue to challenge yourself, you continue to ask yourself why, you'll want to understand frameworks, you'll want to understand theories, you're going to want to understand policies and why when we thought those policies in the 90s were great, they weren't. And what does that mean for the things we're thinking for the policies right now and all of the frustrations that people have? And so be here and be critical. Like, so just be willing to be critical, ask those questions. Those are welcome pieces. And so I know sometimes people wonder, if I'm angry at a system, what does that mean for me? And I just admit that I ask myself those questions sometimes too.
I love it. Thank you. Now, you mentioned that you were a McKnight Doctoral Fellow, and this program focuses on increasing minorities in academia. Can you tell us the importance of programs such as the McKnight Doctoral Fellows?
It's just so important. I mean, these statistics on the numbers of uh, just so many different statistics. The statistics on fields that still have zero Black PhDs coming out of them. So the statistics, I've been looking myself, I think it's like 0.02% of Black females that represent the full rank in the professorate. Like just it feels so astonishing. And it really then challenges us to ask why, and then really calls us to come together. And once again, you mentioned that mentorship. We talked about that community part. Those really, for me, become the focus and the priority.
Thank you. So, how do you stay abreast of all of the current trends in criminal justice?
It is so hard to stay abreast of all the current trends, mainly because there's a lot. I would just acknowledge that all of what people see on the news is not really often juvenile justice. So then people are really thinking a lot about criminal justice, and they're often thinking the worst parts and not the more mundane parts of the criminal justice. They're definitely not thinking about the more mundane parts, like the kid who stole something from the mall. And, they're thinking like, oh no, kid steals car, like, no, those are, media brings things to our forefront and makes us think that they are more commonplace than they really are. And so I really have to balance between watching the news. I watch the news. I've recently been reading Twitter just because I know that Twitter operates at a completely different pace than the rest of the world. So sometimes I'm watching the news and I want more information, and I'll just go to Twitter and see kind of the conversation that's happening there. But honestly, other times I purposely don't watch the news. Other times I say to myself, I'll have to just catch up with that in the next day or two. I often try to minimize that 24, like that rapid news cycle. I like the weekend news as opposed to the daily news, where people have had to take more time to think through, synthesize, and summarize the news, reducing the chance that they're wrong on accident. Um, so yeah, news and Facebook and Twitter.
I love it. So, what would you consider your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that?
I would say my biggest failure was actually when I was an undergraduate. As I was in my junior year, I performed so poorly that I needed to leave the university and I went on probation. And at that point in time, I really had what you think in your life is a midlife crisis, because you're only 20, but you're like, and it's, a quarter life crisis or whatever it might be. But I really had to ask myself, did I want a college degree? Was I doing a should, or was I doing what Danny, really wanted? And part of the issue was that I had fallen out of love with chemistry. And, when you are a chemistry major and you take not only chemistry, but biology, you take, calculus, I was just so downtrodden, really, by the experiences that I was having and the challenges that I was facing. And I really was blessed to have a mentor. My friend Shantae was also struggling at that university, and she challenged me to think outside the box. So then by having that struggle and having to think outside the box at that moment, it really then led me, first of all, to what is called justice systems at the Truman State. So it's like another version of criminal justice. So we have justice systems at Truman State University. But then, fast forward, 3-4 years later, when I'm now in my completed my master's and in my PhD program, I really struggled with my comprehensive exams. And it was the fortitude that I had already, had, where I'm like, I know that this isn't even that. This isn't me not struggling and not being sure I am sure. This is me really needing to explain to the people around me that this system is not working well with my learning disability. You guys are not tapping into my ability to show you whatever you need to see in order for me to pass these exams. And it still translates into my experience today, and just believing in myself that I can push past these obstacles.
And I think I am such an advocate of women sharing the struggle, sharing the obstacles, the barriers, and the challenges. So I appreciate you sharing that, because our younger generation, they need to know that it's not going to be easy, that there will be challenges. But you can navigate them and overcome them. So thank you for sharing that. Now, what would you consider as your biggest accomplishment?
You know, I just was tenured after serving my university for 5 years, which means that I received early tenure, which just feels
Congratulations.
so sweet. And it's not a McNair metric, but one of the McNair metrics is that you get your PhD within 10 years of having graduated. So I felt like it was really, special for me that within 10 years of having gotten my master's, I had achieved this associate professor. And I know that there are a lot of struggles to get into these positions. I know that it is not an equal opportunity, to access these things, but just in dealing with my environment and maximizing the opportunities that I did have for myself, I'm blessed, and I'm beyond proud to have been able to make it to this place within my university.
Wow, that is amazing. Congratulations. What do you
Thank you.
attribute to that, getting that early tenure?
I attribute a few things, definitely in terms of communities that have been supporting me, the Black Doctoral Network Conference, moving through knowing, okay, we're going to present papers in October, work on, other things, get ready for conference, get professional development, get connections and contacts. I've also benefited from other organizations like the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity, which is founded by Carrie Ann Rockamore, which just once again pours in more professional development to Black women, Black and other professionals of color, asking them, what do you need to maintain balance, to have, any sort of vision of wellness for yourself, and of course to be focused in a way, intentionally, once again, about what you want, because I'm here to shake things up and to ask questions in a way that if I wasn't here, people would say, oh man, I wish Dr. Cooper was here. I hope someone goes and find Dr. Cooper so that we can get these questions answered. That's my goal.
Wow, I love that. And that really leads me to my goals question. What process or what steps do you take to reach your goals? Because as I mentioned, you've reached a lot of milestones and that does not go without a strategy. So what process do you use?
You know, big picture, I am a fan of the 5-year plan. That is one of the things that I learned about in graduate school, and it made sense for me because my master's to PhD timeframe was about 6 years. I found out about it after I was in my master's program for about 1 year. So then I had that plan, like, okay, if they're saying you might leave here at this time, what, and that's when I started to address my concerns. What does it mean to have a PhD under 30 and to be out on the marketplace? Because I didn't think that I was actually interested in working in higher education. I was really preparing myself for the criticisms I might receive in the practical world or at a think tank. So I wanted to make sure I had methodological skills. I wanted to make sure I have like all of these pieces. So just setting the goal means that when the obstacles showed up, they were still there. They were very real. I just was less impacted by them in the sense that even if I only made it 25 to 50% where I thought I was going to make it by the time that I said, I was still on a momentum. I still had an intention. And it allowed me, when times got really, really, it made clarity about what to say no to. So in terms of, the 5-year plan, but the other piece is I just love technology. So a good to-do list, I mean, whether that be like a little Google to-do app just to kind of structure yourself, because otherwise you hit that moment, especially in the pandemic, where you're like, what am I supposed to do right now? And we can see how much the media and everything that's going on in the world is here to sabotage our ability to focus. So yes, I would definitely say big picture 5-year plan, even a 1-year plan if
Yes.
5-year feels too far out for you, but a to-do list.
I love that. And you touched on something very valid, is knowing when to say no and saying no to what, because we can get caught up so much in trying to do too much. I want you to expand on that a little bit, because that's a real nugget right there. We have to know what to say no to. Can you expand on that?
It's actually, admittedly, it's more complex than just saying no, because you're saying no because someone's asked you of things. And there's a whole external thing about why people think they could have of you and ask of you to such a high mark. And I'm glad to be in spaces where I see other strong Black women modeling some of these responses. And so I'm often just trying to channel the best me. You know how you kind of power pose and you're like, okay, I might want to say no, but will I say no because of either power dynamics, or I've really been trying to ask myself what I actually mean. So do I mean that it's just not a good time for me and I need to tell you that I have too much on my plate right now so I could create some compassion? Or is it that I need to tell you, no, I'm not interested? Like, don't ask me later. I'm like, no,
I
so I'm
love that.
quiet.
I love that. Absolutely. I love it. So, who or what inspires you?
So many things inspire me. I'm going to go for the easy answer as we are off of just the moment of, January 13th and Delta Sigma Theta. I'm here in New Haven, and the New Haven alumni chapter just has all the best, baddest women. I swear I just love my chapter. I'm always amazed by the work that the women of Delta do, of course, nationally and internationally. But I think to have women, younger women, women my age, older women, to continue to remind myself that there's more. There's more that I could want for my family. There's more that I could want for my community. There's more that I could want for my financial success. And they're rooting for me and they're cheering for me and they are pouring into me in such like fervent and passionate ways that it just reminds me what a blessing it is to have them once again as models as well.
Thank you for that. So, success can be so subjective. How do you define success?
I'm going to go with success is really, I think, this mark that you leave on the world outside of yourself, right? So I think for me, it's that transcendence, right? So success is not just that I'm doing well. Success is that I've now helped someone else do well. I've passed on something that benefits them. And I think that's really why youth justice work is so fulfilling to me, because the youth are such a vessel to be poured into. They pour so much back into me that it really is fulfilling to have this focus on this youth justice and young adult kind of area. Those are some of the pieces of success. I would say just the other piece is the actual word piece, PEACE, like the ability to, at the end of the day, with all the madness in the pandemic, I feel successful because I'm not in strife with my husband. I'm not in strife about having home or shelter. I'm not in strife about the immediacy of my financial setting. So just the ability to know that even though the world is really rocky, I don't have to be rocky with it. That's like, so that equates to success for me.
I love that. Thank you. So, what specific skills as a researcher, as a professor, would you say have helped you become successful?
One of my favorite skills I like to talk to people about is just data management. And I don't mean that just from like a statistics sense. I mean that if you're an academic, you might have decades of file folders. You might have, moved from a paper, notes to a digital notes, back to a paper notes. And so just really thinking to yourself, what are my game plans? So tools that I love that really assist me, I use EndNote. I'm a Microsoft 365 user, so it has its own kind of like planner to-do system called Planner. I use that. Like I use the Teams to organize meetings with my students. And so I think the pandemic gives the ultra example that technology is important, and that, you know, using technology to address some of the data management issues, even if you still want to do things analog. I think that is what the pandemic has also kind of taught me, and something I would want to pass along. I'm definitely writing more notes. There are post-its around, but I'm also trying to make sure that the digitalness of it all, the thing that's making it all accessible, right? Because we're not in our offices doing those things, and we're working across
Yeah.
emails and spaces. So I would definitely encourage all of that and thinking about, and I would just say working with people. Can you work with people? And so I work alone a lot, but I also must disseminate the work. And if I don't have any intent to go and to share the research, give any findings, advocate after I have increased knowledge, then what did I do it for?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, this vast career, what are you most proud of to date?
That's very interesting. I think I'm most proud of having developed a class that is built around the documentary Khalif Browder. That it's available on Netflix, but it was originally aired on FX. But I worked with the Center for Children's Law and Policy for about a year after the documentary first aired, and we produced what is an undergraduate and a graduate version of the class that's built around the 6 episodes of the documentary. So I'm just really proud because it really engages students regardless of their depth of knowledge of criminal justice. And it allows them to really think about all of the layers of injustice that were experienced by Khalif Browder.
Thank you. So, what's next for Dr. Danielle Cooper?
You know, what's next for me is myself and my co-PI, Dr. Lorenzo Boyd. We are just a few weeks away from launching what is the Connecticut Institute for Youth and Police Relations. This is an 8-month training program that is focused on really how do we better help police, specifically when they know they're going to encounter youth. So they're a part of the gang unit, they're a school resource officer, they're a part of the youth bureau. And in the state of Connecticut, we know that there's just 3 hours mandated out of like 1,000 hours that they have in their onboarding training. And we want to make sure that those who are working with youth, we're better working with them so that they could serve youth. And so that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to. It'll allow us to really be working in communities with police officers to better identify solutions, because being solution oriented is the major goal for me.
That's really exciting. Wow. So, how has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network enhanced your career?
I would just say that, you know, when you're not at the Black Doctoral Network, the world, you know, is moving, right? The world's moving, and I live in mostly places that are not predominantly Black places and spaces. And sometimes all of that just saturates on me. Once again, the ask, you know, what's happening in the media, do I want to pay attention? And I can just remember thinking to myself one year, oh, I'm tired, but I'm still going to go. And then I remember leaving that opening session so fired up, and I was like, I remember why I come here. I come here because my people are going to pour into me. I come here because I'm going to have a chance to meet people and learn things. And because it's a interdisciplinary topic, right? Not limited by any one discipline, I learned things from people who are so passionate that I would have never been at their national conference. And so just the opportunity to learn, but also the opportunity to connect. And really, once again, that recharge, right? We leave our conferences, we leave these different, you know, socials and engagements that we have, reminded that we can do it. Hopefully, you know, at this point, me trying to remind someone that however hard you think you had it, I might have had it hard too. We can succeed together. We could pull you up. We could work together, you know. And so those are just the pieces that the Black Doctoral Network has continuously poured into me, and I'm so thankful for.
And you've really been with BDN since the beginning. I mean,
Yes.
talk about that. I mean, that's
You
amazing.
know, just being a nervous little graduate student. My mother is from Philly, so I had family in Philly. I knew I needed a hoagie when I went, and so. But also my best friend is in Atlanta. So then when BDN finally went to Atlanta, then, that was really a moment where I got to have my best friend also come and see me present and get to share with her some of this work that I do that she really hadn't had a chance to see. So just also growing, right? Knowing that from a just being trying to pour it into as a graduate student, hoping that whatever the job market was would work out for me, right? Like we all do, but then also being poured into even now as I'm in the professorate, but connecting on all of these different ways, having the opportunity to be interviewed by you now, having the opportunity to present at conferences. These are the types of things that I think are substantially what my university is glad that I'm working on and glad that I'm making connections for.
Awesome. Dr. Cooper, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Please tell our viewers and listeners where they can go to find more information about the work that you are doing.
I will let you all know about two different things. Most simply, if you're trying to access my public facing professional accounts, I am at Prevention Danny. That's at prevention, the word prevention, and then Danny, Dani. And that's where you could find me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then I would also just want to shout out the Tao Youth Justice Institute. If you're interested in learning more about youth justice in the state of Connecticut or nationally, we have quite a robust information hub. We have all of the information available about my research projects and the work that I do with the research team of students and faculty there. And that is TOW, T-O-W, youth, the word youth, .newhaven.edu. So that's towyouth.newhaven.edu. And that's the website.
Please be sure to stay connected to Black Doctoral Network and connect with us on all of our social media channels. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter. We hope you will join us next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe,